In almost all the web applications, we have to apply some logics based on the validity of the form. If the form is valid, then I want to do something. If the form is invalid, then I want to do something. Here also in the Angular application, we might have these type of scenarios. So we need to perform some operations based on the form validity. And this form validity depends on the rules that we are applying to this particular form. What are the rules? For example, we are applying some validations. Let's say I'm using this title property over here and I want to make it required. It means I have added a new validation in this form that this property is required. Now this form will be valid if it is meeting all the expectations. Means if we are providing the value to this title property, it means this is a valid one. If we are not providing it over here, then this is invalid. Suppose we are using some another validation at this place, and because both these properties comes under the form, so if any one of them is failing, it means the form is invalid. Now let's end this discussion and let's see how can we check whether this form is valid or invalid in the Angular application. Here you can see we are using one directive in this form, and that is this ng form. Let's see more details about this ng form. Here we can go to the Angular official website and I can search for ng4 form over here. So here is the API section. Click on this one and you will see there are a couple of things. Some properties are there submitted. If you need to check whether the form has been submitted or not, means you want to display some message based on the submission, then you can use this property. But now we need to focus more on these two properties. This is the valid and this is the invalid. So we need to work on these two properties. We have already worked with this value property, and in this value we are getting the actual values of the form controls as an object. But here we will talk about these two properties, valid and invalid. Okay, we are using this template reference variable in this HTML form, and to get the valid and invalid value, we can use this same template reference variable. At the bottom side or at the top side, let's do it here. Let's say I'm using this my form dot the valid property. Okay, save the changes and let's go back to the browser. So we are displaying that value on top of the form. Here you can see that this is the value. By default, this form is valid because we are not applying any kind of validations to this particular form. Now, what validations we can apply over here? If you are using the template driven approach, then all the validations that are available in HTML, all of them are applicable. Let's start with this simple one. So here is the first input box, and let's say this one is required. Let's mark this author also as required. So we have added two validations over here in this form. Now this form will be valid only if we are providing values to these two properties. These are must. Okay. Here on the browser you will notice that because we have added the required validations, immediately we are seeing these star with this label. It means it is showing that these are the required, and the Angular will do it automatically for you. Okay, let's say I'm clicking over here and clicking outside, you will see we are getting a red line. It means this field is required and we have not provided any value to this one. There will not be any kind of impact on this number of pages because there is no validation on this one. Okay, in this title property we are having this book. This is the input that we have entered by default. If I will remove it, you will see again we are having a red line over here. It means this form is not following all the required rules because it is failing two validations over here. And if you remember, we were using form.valid property and it is false as of now because these two validations are not valid. Let's enter something here. So let's say this is the data, and here also immediately you will see that it has been converted to true. Now this form is valid. Okay, let's see the second value also, that is the invalid. So here let's copy it again and paste it, and here I'm writing valid and here I'm writing invalid. Like this. Now we can get both the values properly, and let's use one PR tag over here. So here we are on the browser. By default you will see that this valid is false and invalid is true because we have not provided value to this author. if I'm entering any value over here, immediately you have to focus on these two properties. So first I'm typing n. It has been updated. The form is valid, it is true. Invalid is false. It means these properties are just opposite to each other. Based on these properties, we can apply some logics over here. For example, let's say I want to disable this button until this form is valid. How to do that? We can get this validity by using this particular approach, and we can use the same approach on this button. How? Here I can use the disabled, and on this disabled I can use my form dot invalid. If this form is invalid, then just disable this button. Okay, by default you will see that this button is disabled. If I am entering any value in this author, the button has been enabled. If I am removing anything from, let's say, title, immediately you will see that this button has been disabled. So by using this approach, you can check whether your form is valid or not. Now here is one more very important concept. Never ever rely only on the front end validations. Now let's say I do not want to submit this form until everything is valid. Okay, so what he will do, he can just right click on this inspect. Over here you will see we are having this disabled is equals to true. Let's double click and just remove it like this. And there are some classes, let's remove all of them also. Now here on this page you will see that we are having this save button. We have not added the title property, but still it is enabled. If I go to the console section and clear this thing and click on this save button, you will see the save method has been called and a new book has been added. Although we are not saving this data in the database, but if you are using this approach, then if user is modifying these buttons, then he can save the data in the database. And because of this approach, there will be some wrong data or bad data or dummy data in your database. You want to avoid that completely. If I go to the all books, scroll down a little bit at the end, you will see we are having this book. This book does not have any kind of title. Although we have added the required property, but still user was smart, so he did this kind of trick. To avoid this type of scenario, if you are using the API, then always add the validations to your API also. But you need to add one more extra layer. Over here on this save book method, before calling this service, we must check whether the form is valid or not. And how can we do that? We have already done this kind of approach in one of the previous video. We were using this my form in this template file by using this view child, and that was view child like this. So let's say it is the form, or I can simply use the ng form. Now if I will use this my form over here I'm writing, we don't need this commented code, so I can simply remove it like this. If this dot my form is valid, then only I want to call this particular service. Otherwise I want to display an error message. So let's say as of now I'm using the alert, although there are a couple of more ways to display the error message, but here I'm just using this alert form invalid. Save all the changes, go back to the browser and use this new book. Okay, so I'm just removing it from here. We have not added anything else. Let's do the trick on this save button. So I'm just removing it like this. Okay, and just remove all the classes also. Click on the save button. You will see we are getting the message, the form is invalid. Okay, and if I go to the all books section, you will see there is no extra book. So this is how you can add one more extra layer in your component file. But if I will provide everything properly, let's say this is the author, and here I'm passing Angular. Choose a date as well. Let's say here it is. Save. Go to all books. At the end you will see here it is. This is the book that we have just added. This is how you can get the validity of the form by using this template reference variable in this component file and in the HTML file.